Reverend Don Lewis, coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, we can talk directly. If you type your comment or question onto whatever platform you may be watching on, it will show up here in my chat room, and we will talk directly. And today we're going to talk about holiday gifts and holiday gift giving. And today is the eve of the Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States. I do realize our audience is not entirely in the United States. And this is not a holiday on which one usually gives gifts. It's a holiday on which people usually overeat. But it is the opening of the Christmas/Yuletide season when people start to think about holiday gifts. And I want to say that I'm not a great believer in the idea of following the Christian example of huge amounts of gift giving. I think the gifts are very good and in moderation. I'm not entirely sure that I would say that the idea is entirely a good example either of how to acquire things or how to manage your money. But that's not the idea that gift giving is not good, but the kind of extravagant things we sometimes see. Hello to Lynn in the chat room. Hello to Calvin in the chat room. So I'm a believer in more modest gift giving and also more personal gift giving. And I want to talk about some of the things that are good gifts within that context. Some of the things you might want to look for your family and friends who may or may not be pagan or Wiccan or any of our little community here. And there are a lot of things that are good, but one of the things that is worth considering is going to artisans and small merchants in the community who will benefit directly from what you're doing. And your local pagan bookstore, for example, or your local metaphysical bookstore, your local artist, your local potter, your local maker of whatever interesting thing. These people will benefit very directly, and patronizing them will also patronize the community. There's something to be said for keeping our resources within the community. Your local pagan publisher, as opposed to the mainstream commercial publishers. Chances are, if you're buying for a pagan, they'll probably want books on pagan subjects anyway, which you'll mostly get from those pagan publishers, such as The 5 Mystic Secrets, available at CorellianPublishing.com. But these are some of the things that you can patronize your local community and give thoughtful gifts that are not going to be duplicates of what everyone else is doing. Many artists who you will find in our community don't make repeat pieces. Anything you buy from them is likely to be one of a kind. Even if they do repeat pieces, they're often not identical, but merely similar subjects. So, for example, if you look at the sort of vendors you would see at your local pagan festival, your local Renaissance fair, there are all kinds of different things that they produce, and again, they will feel the benefit of your patronage much more strongly than a major commercial retailer. And within our pagan community, chances are the person you're giving the gift to may very well appreciate its uniqueness more than something more commercial. Hello to Jeanette in the chat room. One of the things that tends to be very pagan popular, again, are books. Um, and I don't know many pagans who don't like books. Um, so that's always a good gift for someone in our community. Jewelry is very popular. Statuary is often very popular. Um, and I'm certainly not saying you should not at all buy from large commercial dealers, because some things only come from there. And sometimes people want something quite specific that comes from a particular source. But I am saying if you can patronize your local producers, so much better. If you can create greater prosperity in our community, so much the better. One of the things we've talked about on this program on other occasions is the prosperity of the community. How do we build that? How do we build the infrastructures we want to see in the future? Well, one way is that when we need to do something like giving gifts, that we do it in a way that strengthens our people, our community, um, rather than pulling money out of that community. And I realize that for a lot of people, this is not the thing that they initially think about when they think about going and getting a gift for someone. Uh, but I don't think it hurts us to think in these terms. And I think that when getting a gift for someone, particularly someone from this community, going to the artisans in the community, the publishers in the community, is highly desirable. Now, of course, the other thing that's highly desirable is to make something yourself. Um, this is a community that likes things that are made by hand. It's a community that likes artisanship. So if you make things in this community, they make very good gifts. Um, it's not really the community. I mean, all gifts, of course, are good, and it's always good to give. And so I'm not saying that anything is bad, but I will say that in this community, things with a more personal touch are likely to be appreciated. If you do, for example, crocheting or knitting, these would be gifts that I would think would be highly appreciated in our community. If you know someone who does, and you buy some of their wares, I think that would be highly appreciated in this community. And I think that the kind of orgy of commercial gift giving that we see in the wider community at this time of year is not really healthy. Um, I know that a lot of businesses build themselves in such a way that they're dependent upon it. Um, but I don't think that's healthy either, because if you happen to get a bad season, you're going to have trouble. Um, but I think that in a lot of ways, it makes more sense to give a few personal gifts during the holidays and other gifts throughout the year, to make it an ongoing thing. But in terms of things that you might want to get for this holiday, and certainly most of us are going to get something for someone. Again, I think that this kind of very personal, often handmade item is ideal for our community, or if it is commercial, something that's a little bit more creative. Um, of course, you need to know the person you're getting the gift for if you're going to try to get creative. Um, one of the kind of things um, that I would consider a good gift, for example, might be a decorative perfume bottle. A lot of our people use essential oils, or the oil itself. For example, I regularly use this little oil, and it's called Stress Away, but that's not why I use it. It just happens to have a beautiful scent. And for a lot of our people, that's something they highly appreciate. So a gift of perhaps a set of essential oils or even a particular essential oil, maybe a decorative bottle, would go over very well for many of our people. Again, something that's handmade, hand sewn, hand knitted, hand crocheted would go over very well for many of our people and would have greater meaning to them than a wider commercial sort of gift. A book that they've been wanting is something that many of our people would highly appreciate. Um, these are some of the things I'd recommend. Statuary. A lot of our people um, collect statuary, particularly of historic deities, um, who maybe alter images for religious use or may simply be artistic images. Um, and this can be a very good gift for a person. There are stones and crystals that many of our people are very fond of. Um, although you also have to be careful with certain things that are very personal, um, and make sure that you're getting something they would want. But that's true with any gift. Um, artistic supplies are something that I think would be very welcome in many parts of our community. Um, and although a little bit less locally produced, perhaps, it would help others in their local production. Calvin says, I typically select a couple of families that are down on their luck and provide the resources for their holiday meals. I think that that's a wonderful gift. Um, that's very, very praiseworthy, Calvin. Um, and something that would be highly appreciated, I'm sure. Um, and we do have plenty of people in our community or around our community who would greatly benefit from that. We have lots of people in our society who would greatly benefit from that. Hello to Jane in the chat room. Um, tarot cards might be something that would be of interest to many people in our community. And I happen to have something sitting right here on my desk that, for a crafter, might be of interest. And that's this lovely pair of scissors. And this is the kind of scissor I prefer for almost everything. And they're not that easy to find, and they're relatively expensive. They're barber scissors or hairdresser scissors, but for doing fine detail work in crafting, they're infinitely superior to almost any scissor that's actually meant for crafting, because they can do very fine, very detailed work. That's something your local crafter might appreciate. Anyone who does knitting or crocheting would certainly appreciate a gift certificate to a yarn store. Many crafters would appreciate a gift certificate to a craft store. And these are things that go well in our community. And again, things that are actually produced in our community are very beneficial. And there are lots of places to find pagan merchants. You can find a number of them listed at our Pagan World site, I believe. You can find them often physically at pagan gatherings. And again, keeping our resources in our community helps to build a stronger community. So I would highly recommend it. I also think that in terms of families, trying to move back toward this more personal focus in gift giving is probably a healthy idea, as opposed to the wider, again, orgy of commercial gifts that we often see. I think it tends to devalue, for many people, the whole experience. By making it more personal, we restore it to its origins. And what are the origins of gift giving at the midwinter holidays? A lot of them start with Saturnalia. the giving of gifts during the Saturnalia holiday in Rome was a very important part of that holiday, and it was very much like our modern holiday gift giving. People would give gifts to people they were close to or had relationships with, closer or even more distant. And um, on certain occasions, history tells us those gifts could be a bit perfunctory, um, as unhappy gift receivers left comments on. But generally speaking, they were not. And this was a custom that's continued at least since that holiday, if not earlier, um, and has never really died out, um, at least not entirely. It has sometimes also found its way to other holidays, but usually around midwinter, because again, that's at least in European custom, that's where this tended to start with Saturnalia. Um, for a long time at this time of year, during, for example, the Middle Ages, it was the custom, and for that matter, all the way back to the Roman period, it was the custom for employers to give their employees gifts at this time of year, which very often were clothing, often cast off clothing, which seems perhaps a little callous to us today, but we no longer remember how expensive clothing was at that time. Um, and in fact, I think it was probably quite welcome. Um, but it was not unusual to see the lady's maid wearing the dress from um, a couple of years a couple of years ago's high fashion, um, because of this custom. And it's also where the idea of livery came from, and it usually took place at the midwinter holidays. Um, Other gifts were more personal. Depends on who it was. Um, some of the gifts that were very fashionable historically probably wouldn't go so well now. I mean, for a long time, an orange was considered one of the great Yuletide gifts to receive, and children loved getting them because that's the only place they were going to get them, because they were uncommon during the winter, uncommon for that matter in general. Today we get them at the store, but at the time they were a symbol of the sun, because of what they look like, and highly valued because of their taste and the fact that it was effectively out. Well, it was out of season, and a fairly expensive gift to be giving when all is said and done. Um, you don't really see that sort of gift today because we have such a wealth of food now that we did not historically. Um, and that's an interesting thing when we look at our annual cycle of holidays. Many of them do revolve around food and feasting, which historically was not something you could do every day. And there's a reason that certain holidays required it, because that gave you um, the chance to do it, even if you didn't necessarily want to. Um, and it gave you a little bit of luxury in a season when you didn't necessarily have a great deal of it. But coming back to the giving of gifts, um, it's still a, hello to Elisa in the chat room. It's still a good thing. And it is worth bearing in mind that a lot of people at this time of year wildly overindulge in this custom, often overspend, sometimes find themselves in debt. That is not really something any of us should be doing. Um, we should, when we give our gifts, we should be thinking sensibly, and we should be thinking of what really matters to the person that we're giving it to. Um, And I would like to think that our community does tend to focus a little bit more on that kind of personal gift giving. Hello to George in the chat room. It's good to see you, George. Um, and again, handmade items, locally made items in our community will be highly appreciated. Now, of course, there's always going to be that individual that nothing is going to be exactly what they really want. And what do you do there? A gift card is usually a good idea. But you might look for some of your local businesses to get that gift card from. I was saying before, people who do crafting would love a gift card from a craft store. People who do fiber arts would love a gift card from, for example, a yarn store or a fabric store. And hello to Brenda in the chat room. Brenda says also gag gifts are fun. And yes, they can be. And provided you know the person you're giving it to. And yes, that can be a very personal type of thing to do. That tells the person that, yes, you really did consider them in giving the gift. Hello to Larry in the chat room. It's good to see you, Larry. And this kind of brings me, as we come toward the end of our hour, to the question, is this really a custom that we wish to continue? And I think my answer to that is yes. I think that it is, but I think we need to make it more personal for ourselves as opposed to what some of the wider community does. Both so that that when we receive the gift, we appreciate it more, but when we give it, one, we're not damaging ourselves through overdoing, but also so that we're also considering this process, that it becomes a more personal process. Now, Jade says, we have a t-shirt that gets regifted. That's kind of cool. And George says, is that ring Labradorite? Yes, it is. Let's see if we can get the ring. This is one of my favorite rings. I often wear it if I'm wearing blue, sometimes if I'm wearing gray. And I just happened to find it last night as I was going through things. And I love Labradorite. I love the way that it reflects light. And it's one of my favorite stones for that reason. And Jade says that the t-shirt they regift is now 40 years old. So it's a family tradition. And this is good. But, it seems to me that the greatest gift that you can give a person is your presence and your attention. And I think that for myself, that would be probably the gift I most appreciate. And I think that it's something we often don't think about, particularly and George says, I love it also. One of my favorites. My first crystal was gifted to me was Labradorite. And it's just a beautiful stone. I love the variety of colors. And, it's interesting because depending on the weather and other issues, what finger the ring is going to fit on is always a surprise. Was not the case when I was younger as much, although I had a previous Labradorite ring that ended up getting washed down the drain of a sink because I was wearing it on a finger it just what was too big for, and I didn't think about it when I went to wash my hands. One of the strangest omens I have had. And Calvin says, make the gift giving exciting. Follow the 12 days of Yule. And gifts at times become quite surprising. I think that's a good idea too. Another thing at the midwinter holidays that is no longer practiced as it was quite relatively quite recently, and that is the telling of ghost stories. Most people don't realize, I mean, they all know still the Christmas Carol from Charles Dickens, but they probably wonder why there are ghosts in it. And in fact, Christmas was a major time for ghost stories and supernatural tales historically, right up until like the 1930s, and then it kind of fell away. And I think this would be a good custom to bring back, and could also be a good source of gift ideas. In fact, for that matter, in our community, Halloween-themed gifts for the midwinter holidays would, in many cases, still be quite appropriate. Um, the reason for this, of course, is that Yule, like Halloween or Samhain, or for that matter, like April 1st, was at one time connected to the change of the year. And the change of the year is the death of the old year and the birth of the new year. And that, of course, brought in the theme of ghosts, the afterlife, and the supernatural, which somewhere or another seems to have been dropped from our midwinter traditions, and I think we really ought to bring it back. Pardon my handkerchief, it is winter. And it is, oh, what is it here in Danville? It's 43, not all that bad, but after 10 years in Florida, it takes some getting used to. So these are some of my thoughts on gift giving. And you can find a lot of pagan merchants who offer items that would be wonderful for gifts at paganworld.co. And also all through social media. And I think, again, a gift that comes from within our community has a double value. It's a good gift for the person. Also, it's good for the community itself. And frequently, it's quite unique. And with that, I see that we've come to the end of our half hour. I want to thank you for joining me. I love spending this time of day with you. I hope that you have found today interesting. I will be here tomorrow. I imagine most of you will not, but I will, and we will talk about the Thanksgiving holiday, its pros and its cons. And as I'm sure, all know, there are some of both. And I will see you then. And let us close with our prayer, as we always do. And Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we ask you to help us to remember the joy of giving, and to help us to experience the joy of giving, and to remember that the joy of giving is often greater than the joy of receiving. Help us to be in tune with the people around us, and to help to bring pleasure into their lives, even as we hope they bring pleasure to ours. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, we thank you. Beloved ancestors, we thank you. And we know you are always with us, but from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence. And again, I will see you tomorrow, and may you be blessed now and always. And if I don't see you tomorrow, happy Thanksgiving for those who are celebrating.